Here we go. The minimum system requirement PC for Cyberpunk 2077. Let's do it. First off, let's talk about what powers this system. The minimum system requirements state that you need a 64-bit operating system, either Windows 7 or 10, so hopefully you have one or the other. At the heart of it, we have a fairly standard gigabyte motherboard. For a build like this, almost any motherboard will do. There are two recommendations for the processor. First one is the i5-3570K, which, a third gen Intel processor is actually pretty interesting that this brand new game can be in the minimum system requirements. The second one is the FX 8310, which is the processor that we went with for this build. And as I say that, I believe it's actually the 8320 or the 8330 that we have in here. I'll double check and let you know for sure. We have 8 gigs of RAM in here per the minimum requirements. When it comes to GPUs, there were two options given. The first one was the GTX 780 and the second one was the RX 470. We went with the GTX 780 for this build. And surprisingly enough, this card, despite its age, was better than I thought it would be. It was better than a 1050 Ti, not as good as a 970, but the 970 was a great card, still is. The drawback for this card is that it is a hot and hungry boy with two 8-pin connectors on the card. Obviously DirectX 12, and you're also going to need 70 gigs of space to run this game. In the later specs, they do recommend an SSD, but for this, what we have is we have an SSD boot drive and then a regular hard drive for storage. Just to wrap up our overall specs on this build, we do have a Thermaltake 500 watt power supply running everything, and the Wi-Fi card is optional. Last but not least, we do have more blue LEDs in here than you'll ever need. Side note, I'm not sure how this is going to affect overall performance, but with the older case that we have this built in, there's not a full panel. This is the panel that's sitting over here, and this fan on the panel actually blows directly into this card. So I'm hoping with as hot as that card gets, with the airflow, having that fan blowing directly on there will actually help with cooling and performance. But enough talk, let's get to some actual gameplay. Alright, so here we are in-game, just after our lovely little conversation with the sheriff. I just wanted you to see that we do have our graphics set all the way down. It is 1080p, and we have everything set to low, and we have our field of view brought down all the way down to 70. So this is our starting point as we go. I'll tell you right now, my driving skills are not top-notch. We can see that the GPU is maxed out. It's running at 99% constantly. The CPU, on the other hand, even for an FX 8000 series, we're looking at 61, 63%, but nothing higher than the mid-60s for the CPU, which is saying something. Again, it's an FX processor. RAM is fine, still within range. Frames per second, though, are not great. Even in its lowest settings, our frames are dropping down to 23, 24. It does get up to 30. Ooh, that's gonna cost me. But again, this is lowest settings. You're not gonna get any better from here. I've just switched everything to medium. Through town, try not to hit anyone. This guy should not be tying his shoes right in the middle of the road. But our frames have dropped down into the mid-20s now. And this little test run never even broke 30. Alright, now on high settings. 21, 20, 19, 7, 15 frames per second. 16. Oh, I hit somebody. Police warning. Alright, they're not happy with me. Yeah, we dropped down to 15 frames. We got up to 22 outside of the city, but high settings really just not an option. So my verdict with the minimum system requirement build for Cyberpunk 2077 is the gameplay feels a lot like playing on a last-gen console. The graphics aren't bad. They're actually pretty good. But the problem is trying to run it on a system like this, a system this old with a game this new, at 30 frames per second on low settings. I feel like if you have other options, go for those. Don't get me wrong, if you have a system that is at or around these specs and you want to buy the game, I think you should still buy the game. The $60 game is going to be worth that cost than it is to try to build a minimum system requirement PC. The cost for that is going to be too high right now with the shortage of parts. So yeah, if you have a system already at this spec, go ahead and buy the game. I think you can get some value out of it, but I wouldn't try to build a system at this spec, especially for the prices that are out there. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious to see what you all have to say. I'm curious to see what other reviewers have to say about all this. And yeah, that's all I got for this one. But stay tuned. I will have a recommended system requirement build coming out, which I have a feeling is going to perform a lot better. So thank you for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this game. I know I will. And I'll see you really soon. Thanks.